Oh, I hate that night guy. Yeah, see, night guy always screws morning guy. There's nothing morning guy can do. I absolutely love this classic joke from Jerry Seinfeld, mostly because it hits the nail right on the head when it comes to this bizarre, completely universal human experience. I mean, why on earth do we stay up till 2 a.m. binge watching a show knowing full well our alarm is going to go off at 6 a.m. and we're going to be absolutely miserable? We inexplicably sabotage our own futures every single day, skipping a workout, blowing the budget, eating that extra slice of cake. We treat our future selves with a shocking lack of empathy. But why do we do it? Welcome to this explainer on the stranger paradox and your future self. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the profound psychological disconnect we all have with our future selves. We're going to explore exactly why we so often sacrifice tomorrow for the comforts of today, and we'll look at some truly fascinating cognitive science that proves we essentially view our future selves as complete and total strangers. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the mental time machine. You know, thanks to a system in your brain called the default network, humans are actually incredibly skilled time travelers. Whenever you're just resting, your mind can careen from replaying an awkward conversation you had yesterday to suddenly worrying about where you're going to be 10 years from now. But just because we can project ourselves forward doesn't actually mean we know who is waiting for us. Imagine stepping through a magic gate. This is from Ted Chiang's famous thought experiment. Imagine you walk through a wrought iron gate in a forest. The air gets cold, and suddenly, boom, you are standing in front of your own house 20 years in the future. And the person walking out the front door is you. A bit heavier maybe, some more wrinkles, definitely a different gait. If you could sit down and talk with this older version of yourself, what would you ask them? But more importantly, how much do you truly have in common with them? Okay, let's dive into this. The source material for our explainer today is Hal Hershfield's brilliant book, Your Future Self: How to Make Tomorrow Better Today. And Hershfield's research uncovers a really startling reality. Just visualizing the future doesn't mean we truly know the person waiting for us there. We usually assume there's one core central self that just persists from birth to death. But science? Well, science suggests we're actually an aggregation of separate, distinct selves. And that brings us to Section 2. Are you the same person? So, how much can a person actually change while still remaining the exact same individual? Let's look at a classic thought experiment you might have heard of, the ship of Theseus. Imagine you buy a yacht, let's call it the World Traveler, and you decide to sail it around the world. Over a 3-year voyage, you hit some pretty rough weather. First, you have to replace a tattered sail, then some cracked floorboards. Eventually, you literally have to replace the whole hull. By the time you get back home, every single part of that boat has been swapped out. So, is it still the World Traveler, or is it an entirely different boat? Now I want you to apply that exact same ship paradox to your own body. Are you the exact same person right now as you were when you were 8 years old? Think about it for a second. Your skin cells are constantly turning over, your red blood cells recycle. Even your memories of being 8 are probably fading, or at least heavily distorted by now. If all the biological and psychological parts of you are constantly being replaced and updated, how much of the original you is actually left? If you're thinking, well, my personality is the anchor, consider this number, 60%. That's the probability found in Brent Roberts' massive psychological study that tracked high schoolers over 50 years. If you were the absolute most outgoing teenager in your class, there's only a 60% chance you'll still be among the most outgoing in your peer group as a senior citizen. I mean, that's just a little better than a coin flip. It proves that substantial change is an inevitable part of aging. You are absolutely not a static entity. Which leads right into Section 3, the essential moral self. So if our cells are physically swapping out and our personalities are dramatically shifting over time, what exactly anchors our identity over a lifetime? What makes you, you? So the crucial point is found right here in this data from Wharton professor Nina Strominger. She went to nursing homes to study patients with severe neurodegenerative disorders, and she asked their families if the patients still felt like the same person. The results were fascinating. For ALS patients whose bodies deteriorated but their minds remained sharp, the identity disruption was categorized as low. For Alzheimer's patients dealing with severe memory loss, the disruption was medium. But for those with FTD, frontotemporal dementia, which is a disease that impairs a person's morals, actually making them dishonest or callous, identity disruption was categorized as high. What this essentially proves is that our essential moral traits, our kindness, our empathy, our core values, those are the true anchors of who we actually are. Moving right along to the real climax of our explainer, Section 4, the stranger in your brain. Okay, so here is the core mystery. If we do have a moral anchor tying us to our future selves,
why on earth do we still blow our savings and skip our workouts? Philosopher Lori Paul offers a hilarious but super profound analogy for this. She argues that transforming into your future self is a whole lot like deciding to become a vampire, or, okay, slightly more realistically, becoming a first-time parent. You can ask your vampire friends or your parent friends what it's like, and they'll all say, oh, it's amazing. But because the transformation fundamentally alters your thoughts and your feelings in ways you literally cannot anticipate, it's an inherently unknowable experience. Your future self is, on a deeply existential level, a complete stranger to you right now.
And believe it or not, science actually proved this philosophical concept using fMRI technology. Hal Hershfield and his colleagues did this study where they placed subjects in an fMRI scanner and asked them to judge personality traits for 3 very distinct groups: themselves in the present, themselves 10 years in the future, and a non-controversial celebrity stranger. For this, they used Matt Damon or Natalie Portman.
They were looking specifically at a tiny region just behind the forehead called the medial prefrontal cortex. Now, this is the part of the brain that lights up like a Christmas tree when you think about yourself, and it quiets right down when you think about other people. So, how do you think the brain reacted when forced to think about the future self? Did it recognize that future self as me or as someone else entirely?
And this brilliantly illustrates the answer. Notice that solid line mapping the blood flow for the current self? Lots and lots of neural activity. But look at what happens for the future self. It literally plummets, mapping almost identically alongside the lines that represent a complete stranger. Your brain literally processes your future self exactly like it processes a celebrity you have never even met. It sees them as an entirely different person. All right, let's move into our final section, Section 5, Befriending Your Future Self. The real-world behavioral consequences of our brains treating our future selves as strangers are, frankly, a little terrifying, but they're also incredibly illuminating. To see how this plays out in real life, just look at Emily Pronin's study. She asked students how much of a completely disgusting drink, we're talking a gross mix of ketchup, soy sauce, and water, they'd be willing to consume for the sake of science. For their present selves, they volunteered about 3 tablespoons. When asked to assign an amount to a total stranger, they happily bumped it up to 8 tablespoons. And when asked how much their future self should drink next semester, yep, also 8 tablespoons. We willingly inflict the exact same harsh punishment on our future selves as we do on total strangers. No wonder we skip the gym. To combat this, we have to adopt what philosopher Derek Parfit calls the separate selves model. Instead of viewing yourself as a solo entrepreneur, one continuous person who does every single job forever, try viewing your identity as a small startup company. Over time, employees are going to come and go. The current you is just passing the baton to the future you. And just like older employees have to consciously work to pass down values and culture to the new hires, you actually have to consciously build a relationship with these separate future versions of yourself. You have to treat them like a dear friend, not a stranger. Now, people have actually been trying to bridge this gap for centuries. Back in 1773, Benjamin Franklin was so obsessed with seeing the future of the country he helped found that he dreamed up this bizarre preservation scheme. He wrote to a friend expressing a desire to be immersed with a few friends in a cask of Madeira wine, hoping to be awakened a century later by the warm American sun. It's a hilarious historical anecdote, for sure, but it really shows our deep, enduring human yearning to connect with the future. Today, people are taking Franklin's dream to the absolute extreme. Over at the Alcor facility in Arizona, hundreds of people have paid to have their bodies cryogenically frozen in liquid nitrogen, hoping technology will eventually revive them so they can quite literally become their ultimate future selves. Now, while you might not be freezing yourself in a vat of liquid nitrogen anytime soon, the question still remains. If your future self is functionally a separate person, what kind of ancestor are you going to be to them? Are you going to sabotage them like Seinfeld's night guy? Or will you make the sacrifices today to ensure that the stranger waiting for you tomorrow is healthy, happy, and well-funded? Honestly, how far will you go for your future friend?